What happens when we meet someone for the very first time? We're seeing a face that we've never seen before, and we're looking into the eyes of an essence of self that we've never really gotten to know before. And we are interacting in a moment that's never happened before. And it's a fresh slate, a clean start, a new opportunity, a brand new moment to interact and engage and learn about who this someone is for the very first time without any assumptions about who they might be. What happens when we interact with ourselves? A lot of the times, there's these instinctive assumptions and stories and automatic perceptions or habits or emotional tendencies or responses. And maybe those are really, really good and positive and deep sense of inner love and respect and well-being and whatnot. But sometimes that's not always the case. And subconscious navigation might project things that are not necessarily so pleasant when we interact with ourselves. But all that actually is a disruption of subconscious navigation because of past moments of unfulfilled attachment needs. It has nothing to do with who the self really is. And so if there's all these experiences that have developed these stories or these unconscious memories that have created meaning-making associations that now project a certain style of navigating your own existence, that has nothing to do with who the self really is. And parts of the self, these self aspects, can get lost in all of it. Because if we're just looking at the automations of navigation of the body-mind, then those actual parts of the self who are within experience aren't getting to be loved for the fullness of all that they are. Because parts of the self are different from brain-body wiring. And the navigation of experience is different from the identity of who the self really, really is. And if parts of the self aren't getting to be seen for who they are, because we're just seeing them through the lens of this automatic brain-body wiring that's providing navigation, then those parts of the self can get very lost and they don't get to experience all that they are. And they might be lost in the body-mind wiring, they might be lost in the experience, they might be lost and not able to connect with other parts of the self, but either way, it can reduce the beautiful wonders of life in some really profound ways. And it might be subtle or it might be really dramatic. As we start to shape-shift body-mind wiring and liberate internal attachments by fulfilling those needs for these parts of the self, then the past experiences that have created present neural data start to be transformed, and then navigation shifts, and then you can actually have more space to meet parts of the self for the very first time. Okay, so imagine this, just track with me here, okay? If experience has created this body-mind wiring, and that is creating a certain projection regarding who you are, how you perceive these parts of yourself, or how you interact with life, or how you interact with these parts of yourself. But then you start to do these simple, fun, easy, enjoyable, low-key, just takes a few minutes here or there, and they're fun and easy, and it's like awesome. It's like a little party. You start to do these little daily practices that tend to these attachment needs at the foundation of the body-mind. And in that process, all of that existing data gets rewritten, reconstructed, rebuilt. Okay, so without looking at past experiences or existing memory data, it can be resculpted by tending to attachment needs. And there's infinite ways to do that. There's social self-engagement practices and Mirrorthons, but there's also like hundreds of thousands of other ways you can do it. There's so many different ways that we can tend to attachment needs. There's hundreds and thousands of different ways. And so finding what fits for you is what's most important. Finding something that helps your attachment needs be fulfilled in a way that you can enjoy matters so much more than being like, oh, well, this is the way I should be doing it, or this is the way it should be feeling. So it's important to find what fits for you, in the journey. Because what works for one person might not work for another person. Or if it's not fun and enjoyable, then you're not going to want to keep showing up for it. So you got to find what fits for you, what works for you. And then as these attachment systems start to be transformed, then that navigation is shape-shifting. And then there are these parts of the self who have more space in the body-mind to flow and get to know each other and get to know life without the restraints and constrictions of those past experiences or present memory data that had been providing this specific style of navigation. And then you get to start having these breakthroughs where you meet parts of yourself for the first time. And again, social self-engagement practices and different types of mirrorthons are some of the most powerful ways, but those aren't the only options. And so if those don't speak to you, but this path of healing, journey, loving liberation stuff does, there's lots of different options. Implicit transformation course is a very good example. And so once this starts to be shape-shifted, then there's more space for these parts of the self to be seen for who they are and to get to know themselves for who they are and to get to know each other, for these parts to interact with other parts of the self without the constraints or restrictions of past experiences or the way that body-mind navigation was operating, etc. And then you can have these moments where it's like meeting these parts for the first time. And back to the first example at the beginning of this video, when you meet someone else for the very first time, you're seeing a face you've never seen before. And so there might be some curiosity. There might be some unexpected eagerness. There might be just a clean slate on the way you're able to perceive. There's no projections disrupting the newness of an experience, right? If you see somebody you've seen for 1,000 times, then all those experiences have created body-mind information that affects navigation. And so then you're in a new moment with them, but there's all these past moments that are providing navigation in that moment. But when you meet someone new, you don't have that because you've never interacted with them before. And there's a lot of power in that because then it's a fresh slate. Anything can happen. And if you get to know who they are, there's nothing to disrupt the newness of getting to know them. You don't have any preconceived notions of who they are. And so then these parts of the self get to be seen in that light where there's no preconceived notions of who they are or who they're supposed to be. And then they feel like there's more space, there's more wiggle room to be themselves. There's more wiggle room to be who they really are. And then you can get to know who the parts of the self are independent of experience. And this is another really, 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 really powerful, important point. This is a really, really powerful, important point. Parts of the self are not the same as the experience or body-mind wiring. And so when there's a perception of who a part of the self is, oh yeah, I have these parts of me who enjoy rollerblading, and I have these parts of me who get really frustrated about this, and I have these parts of me who know a lot about penguins, and I have these parts of me who whatever it might be. How the parts of the self relate with experience is not the same thing as the identity of the self. Okay? How aspects of the self relate with experience is not the same thing as who the identity of the self is. And so if you perceive parts as being who they are in relation with these components of experience, you're not actually getting to know those parts of the self at all. And you're missing out on getting to know you and who you really are. And it's good to be familiar with and acquainted with these parts of the self and to enjoy experiences together and to know the preference of these parts of yourself so you can love them deeper and enjoy life together. But how these self aspects relate with components of experience is not the same thing as the identity of these self aspects. And if you only know parts of the self in relation with how they associate with these components of experience, and body-mind wiring and navigation of reality, then you're not actually getting to know the parts of the self at all. And so this process of healing internal attachments by fulfilling these attachment needs for the self, and because that is at the foundation of the body-mind, it indirectly reconstructs everything that's ever been built on top of that, including hundreds of trillions of pathways of unconscious memories affected by every nanosecond of life experience since infancy. So, big deal. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's a big deal. It achieves so much. It's a big deal. In that process, we actually create space in the body-mind for the self to expand into more of itself, regardless of those experiences or subconscious navigation or unconscious memories or details of brain-body wiring. And then there's this wiggle room where the self is like, wee! I get to be me, and I get to know what that actually feels like, without being constrained by these perceptions of a human identity, right? Like if you have these preferences and these hobbies and these emotional responses and these habits and these relationships and these whatever, then the identity of the self feels restricted by these finite external components of experience. But once that is like, okay, yes, that's an aspect of experience. Yes, that is an aspect of how my body-mind navigates life. But it has nothing to do with who the self actually is and who these parts of me actually are. And so we can enjoy that stuff together. We can be aware of that stuff together. But I also want to be over here getting to know who these parts of myself actually are. I want to get to know who these parts of me really are. I want to see myself for the first time. I want to help these parts of me be seen for the first time. I want to break free and have greater room for all of me to be all of me, and for all of me to be with all of me as all of me is being all of me. And I won't know what that actually looks like until I stop associating with this and I do this inner work play. It's inner work, but it's really just playing. It's really just a lot of playing. Until I do this inner play of having some kind of practice to consistently show up for attachment needs. Until I do this inner play and stop associating with the experience, I won't get to know who these parts of me are. I won't even have that opportunity. And so the healing journey is, one, establish loving presence. Nothing can happen without loving presence. If you're not present, you don't have an opportunity in a moment. And if you're not connecting with love, then you're not going to have as much power as you otherwise would. So loving presence is like a good place to start. 2, have some kind of practice that helps parts of the self experience the fulfillment of their attachment needs independent of experience, where you're creating it for yourself, even if nothing and no one else is helping create that for you. And then once you continue with that practice, then the body-mind starts to shape-shift its navigation. And all of these past experiences and all this existing data and all the ways that the body-mind instinctively navigates life starts to expand and evolve and be transformed and transmuted and uplifted. And then from that space, then 3, get to know parts of the self for who they are, independent of experiences, independent of memories, and independent of automatic internal navigation. Those 3 things are the path to massive loving liberation. And in the process, the body-mind gets to be healed and restored into its natural state of love and well-being. And navigation and regulation get to expand in its potential for effective love and well-being. Loving presence, a consistent practice to help create a felt sense of attachment, well-being for the body-mind. And then, because consciousness actually doesn't have attachment needs, interestingly enough, consciousness doesn't actually have any attachment needs, only the body-mind does. And so we're actually creating a felt sense for parts of the self in the body-mind, because the body-mind is the component of reality that has these attachment needs, parts of the self, don't actually have attachment needs. They're only experiencing that because they're flowing through the body-mind. It's like a really interesting paradox. And then with this daily practice to help the body-mind, then there's more space to get to know parts of the self, because parts of the self are not the body-mind. They're not. But they've never fully known that because they've only ever encountered who they are in relation with experience, in relation with memories, in relation with body-mind navigation. And so as we start to reclaim power over this body-mind wiring with these consistent practices through loving presence, then there's more space to get to know these parts of the self and to see who they really are. And there are, again, hundreds and thousands of ways to do this. And all of my different services and creations offer a variety of ways to go about this process and this practice and this type of pathway of loving evolution. But among the infinite potentials, there are personalized Mirrorthon journeys. And the amazing part about these is that the unveiling process reveals parts of the body-mind that could use some loving liberation to help improve navigation and regulation. And in that process, then, we start to connect with those aspects of the self. And then through the transformation journey, which is an ongoing practice, a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. The body-mind starts to be resculpted, and these parts of the self start to get to come home to each other in a brand new present moment that's never happened before. And then in that process, you reach these spaces where the body-mind has been so profoundly rewritten just while hanging out and having fun without looking at any memories or past experiences. The body-mind has been so profoundly resculpted that you literally get to meet yourself for the first time. You look into a mirror and the navigation isn't projecting any automations of reality because it's been resculpted. And so just like meeting someone for the first time, there's this sense of expansion and curiosity and a clean slate and a fresh start. And you get to see these parts of the self for who they really are in this brand new moment that's free from projections and free from distortions and free from limitations. And that is the coolest thing. There's no way to fully put that into words. I've been experiencing this on a regular and consistent basis for years, literally. And every few days or every week or so with these daily practices, then there comes a brand new moment where there's a new breakthrough and all the interplay starts to pay off, and you look in a mirror and I'm just like, I've never met you before. Hi, it's so nice to see you for the very first time. And for the parts of the self to feel that sense of being seen for the first time, where they're seen for who they are and they're seen in a brand new present moment, and they're not seen for the experience and they're not seeing through the limited lens of subconscious navigation. There's a great sense of loving liberation from within. And among the infinite potentials, it can lead to literally full body laughter until you're crying. That's one of my favorite byproducts of regular Mirrorthons. There's like these incredible eruptions where it's literally laughing, full body laughter, like uncontrollable full body laughter. It's a massive like DNA repair upgrade thing. And absolutely just sobbing, this mind-heart coherence just in a profound state of connection and balance and harmony. And there's just this expansion and explosion of energy, and parts of the self are like, I'm me and I'm free and I'm seen. And this has never happened like this before. And it feels amazing. And so, the body-mind sits there and says, whew, what a relief to be seen and loved for who I am, to be safe and secure in this moment, to be supported and connected with all of me, to be respected and embraced for who I am. And then these parts of the self are like, woohoo! Liberation of energy, so I can be more of all of me and actually get to know what that feels like for the very first time. So they're really, really just incredibly powerful. and so enjoyable and so effective and so wondrous. So I invite you and encourage you to explore loving presence, a regular practice of some kind. Maybe it's just as simple as breath work and yoga, or whatever it might be, but some kind of consistent practice to be there for the attachment needs of your body mind. And then as you show up for that regularly, start to notice an expansion of space to meet parts of you without there being any reductions or distortions or limitations based on experiences, past or present, or potential, and without any disruptions of body-mind navigation, and without any projections from memories or past experiences. And then you start to get to know who these parts really are. And these parts of the self are love. These parts of the self are love's sacred embodiment, love's sacred champion, love's sacred presence, love's sacred witness. And they give and preserve and perceive and receive energies of love within experience. And that's who parts really are. That's who parts of the self actually are. And if there's any moment where parts of the self aren't connected with that, then they're being lost in the automations of body-mind navigation. They're being lost in the experience, and they're not able to connect with themselves. They're not able to be all that they are. Parts of the self are love's embodiment, love's champion, love's presence, and love's witness. And they give, preserve, perceive, and receive energies of love. That is who the self actually is. That is who subconscious parts actually are. But anything else that doesn't feel or resonate with exactly that just means that parts of the self are associating with body-mind wiring, or subconscious navigation, or automations of experience, or memories of past experiences. And that means that they are blended with the brain-body or body-mind wiring, and not able to experience themselves independently of that. And through a practice of loving presence, distinction and connection between self aspects, and self-attunement, which are the 3 prefacing steps of social self-engagement, the steps that happen before you can effectively achieve a social self-engagement practice. There's 5 steps. The last 2 are the parts where you actually do the social self-engagement practice, but those are the first 3 that precede that. Loving presence, distinction and connection between self aspects, and self-attunement can help unblend these parts of the self from this brain-body wiring. And there's a really, really amazing practice actually to do this in my Restoring Consciousness toolkit, Restoring Consciousness course. It's much more low-key investment than a lot of the longer courses or some of the services that I offer. And you follow thought forms, trace them back to what parts of the self they connect with and what attachment needs they connect with, and then you start to show up for those parts of the self. And so it's a really beautiful kind of mini course type of thing, really powerful. So if that interests you, you can explore out Restoring Consciousness Toolkit, one of my many courses that's offered. And if this concept also interests you at all, my treasure mapping services are an amazing way to explore who the parts of the self are in relation with this brain-body wiring, and how to distinguish the identity of the self from components of experience, how to understand experience based on this brain-body wiring, and how memories are organized in relation with attachment well-being, and how to reclaim power to transform any of that, and how to be there for parts of the self and have power within all of this from the space of pure presence and loving awareness. And so that is offered through my treasure mapping services. A whole lot of fun, a whole lot of fun. And so I just encourage you to explore this idea and explore these concepts and see how they might apply to your everyday healing journey of loving liberation as we expand into the divine restoration of our natural states of being and connect with our sacred divinity and connect with the expansion of our soul self and connect with the expansion of our inner child liberated and expand into the fullness of all that we are here to be. And to do that through love and allow that love to guide us into each next step, dissolving any illusions of less than love in the process. Thank you for being here and thank you for being you. I'm grateful that you're here and I appreciate the miraculous wonders of your sacred sovereign self. If you feel called to connect with me, you can connect with Kristin. Connect with Kristin. It's a little form on the homepage of my website. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I share or any clarifying questions about any of my offerings through my business. And then there's opportunities to explore the videos and the courses and Mystic Odyssey Imaginatives and programs and playbooks and different services and connecting through Loving Liberation, soul sessions, consciousness consultation calls, treasure mapping services, personalized Mirrorthons, and so much more. And I also have a merchandise store as well. So please do explore all those offerings. I would love to share my creativity and wisdom with you to serve you as you expand into all that you are here to be and move beyond anything you've ever known so that you can know the fullness of all that you are and have power to influence anything happening inside of you so that you can experience more of the power of unconditional love that is the truth of your being. And I am honored to be in service of this divine intention as we expand into this together. Have a beautiful and blessed day, and I will see you in another content creation. How these self aspects relate with components of experience is not the same thing as the identity of these self aspects. And if you only know parts of the self in relation with how they associate with these components of experience and body-mind wiring and navigation of reality, then you're not actually getting to know the parts of the self at all. And you're missing out on getting to know you and who you really are.